So welcome to lecture 6 of Mind and Reality. This is an exciting moment because now we're starting a new topic, indeed our third of 7 topics for the course. The topic concerns consciousness, or as it's sometimes called, perceptual awareness. So here you see some flowers. You and I see those flowers and are thereby perceptually aware of them. For us, you and I, seeing the flowers is a way of being conscious or aware of them. Bees have some visual abilities and they can discriminate colours as well. So this bee here can be processing much the same visual information as you or I do from its sensory encounter with the flower. So in a basic sense, you might say, look, the bee sees the flower just as you or I do. I'm happy with that, no objection. But here's the thing, is the bee thereby perceptually aware of the flower? Is there awareness or consciousness of the flower in the bee? Now, it's hard to know how you'd even begin to answer that question. We know a lot about behavioural, physiological and neural aspects of bee vision. One of the sources for this lecture just below will tell you about that if you're interested. But none of that, although it's amazing what's been discovered, seems to bear in any clear way on the question of whether the bee is aware of the flower in seeing it. Now, the point I want to emphasise isn't really that there's little consensus on whether bees are conscious of flowers. That's true, but there's a deeper point here. There's little consensus even on the issue of how we might go about investigating that question. That's a sign that we don't know what consciousness is in the first place. We don't understand it even well enough to understand what it would be to make the discovery. In this respect, consciousness is unlike many other central features of our lives. Disease, reproduction, cooperation, language, politics, any of these things can be investigated. There's broad agreement on some basic facts in the area, and there are some widely used methods. Of course, there's still lots to discover, but you couldn't say that we had nothing. In the case of consciousness, it seems that things are very different. There's very little agreement on basic facts and a scarcity of useful methods. Now, don't let the bee here give you the wrong impression. I'm very fond of the bee, being good to me. But the issue isn't whether the bee is conscious or not. That might be an important issue for the bee, but it's not critical for us. Our job isn't really to go around deciding or working out which things are conscious and which things aren't. There is a much deeper challenge that we face. The key problem for us is to try to get a clear enough handle on consciousness, or awareness as I'll call it, that we can investigate it in the same way that we could investigate other phenomena that are central to the lives of humans and perhaps many other animals. So I'm introducing you to my bee mainly to highlight the depth of our ignorance. We don't understand what consciousness, awareness is well enough to study it. If we are ever to understand it well enough to make progress here, we need to start by thinking about what roles consciousness plays. Why does it matter that we are sometimes, in perceiving things, thereby conscious of them? And in asking that question, I'm really coming to, as I say, the third of our 7 questions. What good is your perceptual awareness of the objects around you? What good is your perceptual awareness of the objects around you? Now, this question has typically been put in terms of the notion of a function. Instead of saying what good, you might say, what are the functions of perceptual awareness? Now, that's not supposed to be too confusing. So this notion of function, of course, there's a lot that you might wonder about here. But the point of talking in terms of functions is really to draw parallels with other familiar cases. So I might say to you, what are the functions of feathers? And if you've been reading Wikipedia recently, you might say feathers are important for heat regulation, for display, particularly mating displays, and for flight. Now, of course, there might be other things that feathers are important for. You might be wrong about one or another of these things. I'm not sure. The point is that we know, or rather, our group, including all of our scientists, right? The humans know quite a bit about the functions of feathers. A lot of discoveries have been made about the functions of feathers. What we want are the parallel discoveries for the case of perceptual awareness. What are the functions of perceptual awareness? Now, the first thing I want to do is to ask you to spend 90 seconds with your lecture buddy or lecture buddies, the people that you are hopefully pursuing these lectures with. Off the top of your heads, quick discussion. What could you imagine might be the functions of consciousness? Take a guess. Have some imagination. Have some thoughts. What do you think are the functions of perceptual awareness? And I'll ask you to write this down for me. 90 seconds, go. Great. So what I'd like you to do is make a note of the thoughts that you now have on this question. Maybe they're just guesses, they're wild ideas, speculations, conjectures. That's fine. Make a note before you go on and look at the rest of this material, and then come back to it at the end. What did you think before? How has it changed? Has it changed? Right? Is there something important that you see now that was missing from the discussion that we're about to have? That will be useful. Write it down, keep a note, come back to it at the end. How do we make progress? Well, I think one way to make progress here, by far not the only way, but a way to make progress that turns out to be reasonably productive, is to look at attempts to study cases where there is perception without awareness. Here's my thought. We want to know what the functions of perceptual awareness are. How would we be worse off if we didn't have perceptual awareness, but there was still some kind of perception? The studies on perception without awareness ought to give us some kind of handle on why the awareness part is so critical. So that is what we'll do now.